Hey everybody, I'm Jordan
And I'm Kirk.
with PDQ.com. Today we have a special guest, James Petty. He's the CEO at PowerShell.org. And there's a lot going on with PowerShell right now that he has his hands on. And we figured we'd bring him in and we'd talk about it, see kind of what's happening in PowerShell right now, what's coming out, and I guess kind of the future.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I guess start off, you're the CEO of PowerShell.org. So that's the forums are fantastic, but it's also just kind of the main page is what's in the pipeline for what's next in PowerShell?
No, so PowerShell.org is kind of the home, the face of the community. We're trying to rebrand a little bit, but it's where we're trying to get people to come write their own blog posts. You know, a lot of people don't want to host their own blogs. So we're kind of offering that, but the forums are the big thing that we're known for. And of course the events as well.
Yeah. Well, the community, like the forums stuff, I've never met a community quite like PowerShell. It's never been quite so welcoming. Andrew and I, who is the other person up on the Zoom there, we started a podcast talking PowerShell on the community. The whole point is how great the community is. And we've got nothing but people willing to come in and talk to us, which surprised me, but it shouldn't have based on that we love the community. But so if you're looking to learn the forums, everyone's always willing to help there. Is there any news and events come to that one? Or is that just more of hey, I'm doing this in PowerShell, either contribute and help or ask questions or?
So the forums are very much like, hey, I had this problem. Can someone help me? We get about 200,000 active views a month in the forums. They're very active. We have some great moderators. Of course, we're always looking for some more. We have like 3 or 4, but as you can imagine, so 200,000 views, get about 100,000 questions a month. It's a little much for 4 people.
Well, they just need to work harder.
Well, of course, and they're all volunteers too.
All volunteers, so
Definitely work them harder. That's a good investment.
absolutely, yeah. Free labor, you got to take advantage of while you got it. All right, so
You mentioned events as well.
the events.
Sorry. So we do in a pre-COVID world. We were kind of planning 7 events throughout the year. Of course, we won't talk about 2020. That's just we're going to act like it didn't happen. And then in 21, we came back with the PowerShell Summit. It's our big signature event, usually hosted in Bellevue, Washington, right outside Seattle. So we're coming back in person April 25th through the 28th. I'm going to be super excited about that. I'm sure we'll talk a little more about that. But then we also have some PowerShell Saturdays kind of scattered across the U.S. I'm personally hosting one here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I think Mike and Phil are doing one out in Raleigh. I hope they're not watching because they haven't 100% committed to that. And then we also have the Automation Summit, which is going to be in Nashville the week after Thanksgiving.
Right, and then
Awesome.
I think Automation Summit, that was hosted by Andrew, I think, this last year. Or is that?
Yeah, so Andrew was on our content team. So it was him and Brandon Olin selected all the content for the Automation Summit, which took place virtually last year. And Andrew just agreed to come back again and do that again for our third attempt at an in-person event.
I saw that you're holding them hostage. It's like, I might not show up. We'll see what you agree to do.
He wasn't supposed to tell you that.
No, it's a lot of fun. It was interesting having to pivot last minute to virtual.
Yeah, so that was not fun. We pivoted with about a month's notice last year, and it was just not fun. But we're excited to be back in Nashville.
Absolutely. I noticed a lot of the presentations from all of the conventions, those are up on your YouTube. Yeah, the PowerShell.org has a YouTube channel where you kind of record those sessions. So if someone wants to see the data that's come out, they can catch up on those or?
Yeah, absolutely. So the youtube.org or youtube.com/PowerShellorg, all of the videos from all of our events, well, the 2 summits, the PowerShell Saturdays don't get recorded because it's very cost prohibitive, but from the 2 summits, they're all there. They're there for free for community consumption. Like we don't make anything off of them. We don't resell them out to anybody. So that's where they live until YouTube is not a thing anymore, which I don't think we have to worry about that for a while.
And there's some really great talks up there too. Like if you're into a particular part of PowerShell, like for example, security, there's some really great talks by Lee Holmes over the years that give you a lot of insight into some things under the hood and some cool stories. There's a lot of really great presentations on that channel.
Yeah, and while, like Andrew said, a lot of that content may still be older, it is still very relevant today.
Definitely.
And you mentioned Mike earlier. I saw a tweet from him. He was talking, if you're looking to start a PowerShell user group, if you put that in the forums, they'll help you get that advertised so you can get more people to attend and kind of help the PowerShell community grow that way.
Yeah. So one of the initiatives that we started when we brought Mike on was like, what can we do as an organization do to serve our PowerShell user groups? Of course, it's all in a pre-COVID world. We've probably had a dozen or so user groups in the United States. That's kind of where we were focusing. They were kind of meeting. Of course, they all meet independently. They all do their own things. So we were just trying to wrangle the cats a little bit, offering assistance with, so we give them a Microsoft 365 license that we get. That way they can meet via Teams, and they have a SharePoint and a OneDrive. That way they don't have to, because what we were hearing is a lot of people were paying for Zoom out of their pocket, or Blue Jeans or WebEx or whatever the platform was at the time. So they're kind of offering some assistance to help cover that cost. We're looking at possibly covering meetup expenses again. So that's something we were doing in the past. So we're looking at starting that back up later this year. As user groups kind of start getting back up and going, meeting in person.
That's awesome. So I think that a lot of the people who are watching may not be too familiar with PowerShell.org, or even maybe they're interested in learning more PowerShell. I know you've been working on a book that's kind of related to that. Do you have anything to say about what you would recommend for beginners?
Yeah. So if you're interested in getting into PowerShell, so we have, I was the lead author on the 4th edition of Learn PowerShell in the Month of Lunches that just released a few days ago. I believe they're supposed to start shipping those physical copies today if you've already ordered one. If you haven't, you go over to Manning. Actually, if you want a 40% discount, go over to my Twitter page. Maybe Kelly can put it there in the chat. And I have a link there, and that will give you 40% off. And that is good until the end of the week. So tomorrow. And then from there, that's a really great place to start. That's where I got my start, and that's where Andrew got his start, and where most people in the PowerShell community started was with Don Jones and Jeff Hicks's Learn PowerShell in the Month of Lunches.
Yeah, and in a month of lunches is kind of like what it is, right? In a month of lunches, you'll have a great foundation of PowerShell that you can do a lot of things. You have a very good foundation to tackle new problems, to know how to approach problems, to improve your existing code. It's a really great format for learning this kind of thing, I feel. Yeah,
so there's 26 chapters, 24 of them are actionable. Obviously the first and the last chapter are just more kind of this is what you're buying and thanks for buying. But the rest of the ones are all really good, and they all build on each other. So by the time you get to chapter 24, you're using all of those techniques that we've built on over the last 23 chapters.
Is that book good for a refresher? I have worked in PowerShell previously, but it's been probably 4 years since I did it daily. Would that be?
Every time I go back and reread a chapter or had to work on a chapter, there was always something new that I would pick up on. So even if you think you're a PowerShell guru or a PowerShell hero, whatever, it never hurts to go back to the basics, because there is always something you forgot, or in Jordan's case, you're overthinking things.
Well, thanks for calling up that code. I'm going to make sure I get myself a copy when we're done here. I'm going to pick that up. Thank you.
So I think initially the goal with this was to be like a supplement for the original, just focusing on PowerShell 7 because that's got the cross-platform availability, but it just kind of, there's so much in there, it just became a whole new 4th edition.
Right. So this was originally Tyler and Travis were the original authors, and they were only focusing on Mac and Linux. And then the feedback that Manning was getting was that they, Mac and Linux is great, but we're still a Windows shop, and that's what a lot of people are still using PowerShell on. So when Tyler, I think Tyler got a new job, and Travis had some other things he had to work with, so they brought me on to do all the Windows portions of it. Sorry, I got a gnat. And then from there, it's just kind of evolved into the book, into what it is now.
You mentioned PowerShell on Linux, and the most recent time I used it was from a Linux workstation. I found that the Exchange, especially L365 management tools, didn't work great. What's been your experience? Have you played on the Linux port much?
Not on Linux. My daily driver's a Mac, but as far as PowerShell is concerned, they're kind of the same. But yeah, there are a lot of modules that are not cross-platform specific. So you can go to the PowerShell gallery and it will tell you if it's cross-platform. Let's say PowerShell Core, or it'll just say Windows PowerShell. But again, not everything works as it's supposed to on the Mac and Linux, and that's part of the growing pains. It's getting better and better every day, but it's still not 100% there yet. Yeah, typically, if I have to deal with anything in 365, I use Cloud Shell. That way, it's right there, and I never have to worry about it.
That's the first time I've heard of Cloud Shell. I'm going to check that out. But I ended up in a virtual machine to solve my problem just because of that support that you're talking about.
Right.
Well, I think a lot of the aliases in PowerShell duplicate common commands in Linux, so I think there's a lot of issue with the commands on that one.
Yes, that's one of the hard points that they're hitting on, and also, Linux and Mac are case sensitive, whereas Windows and PowerShell are case insensitive. So that's also causing people some heartburn. So it's a learning curve, but it's causing a lot of people to get mad about it.
What I'll say, though, for someone who typically uses Windows, knows a bit about Linux, and has used it on occasion to do things, it's so nice to be able to install PowerShell, run PowerShell, and have the familiar prompt, the familiar commands to at least navigate the computer effectively and do some basic scripting really easy. While it doesn't have all the functionality, it's really cool that you can still use it. I've actually done some CTFs using PowerShell, running on WSL, like Windows Subsystem for Linux. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Windows and PowerShell.
Yeah, and that was one of the exciting things about writing the book was if you go back and look at most of the screenshots are not from a Windows system. They're from a Mac or a Windows terminal running WSL. So I had to make sure that all the commands worked in all three platforms. So it was kind of a challenge. It was also got me a lot more familiarity with those systems as well.
What is the WSL?
It's the Windows subsystem for Linux. I think WSL 2 is the new one now. It just basically allows you to run a Linux instance on your Windows desktop. So, for instance, I was running Ubuntu 18.04 is the latest release. But at the time, I think they're up to 20 something for the long-term stable release.
Yeah.
A lot of people use it to run their Docker containers. I'm not a Docker person. I can barely spell it. But I know a lot of people, they'll do the WSL so they can use Docker on their Windows machine.
I don't think I know anyone that's done a dive into Docker that doesn't love it. It's all about, do you want to dive into that kind of environment? Because it seems incredibly useful. But
yeah, it's powerful to break it out that way. If you're trying to do continuous development, Docker or Kubernetes are really powerful tools. They have their use case, but they do take some of the simplicity away initially. Once everything's set up, it becomes very simple, but there's a lot that has to be done. But I've used the WSL myself, as I prefer that to PuTTY. If I have to shell from Windows machine, I think that the Ubuntu version WSL is a better shell experience than PuTTY offers.
So, James, I've got a question for you too. This is just a kind of background, and I think you maybe addressed it a bit in the PowerShell podcast that we did with Jordan and Andrew. How did you get interested in PowerShell? What was it that got you going down this path in the first place?
Yeah, so it started in 2014 with my previous employer. So my old job department got dissolved, so I got moved into the Windows admin group. And one of the first tasks I was given was to we had to create a new global group, which someone else did. And they're like, we need to put this global group as a local admin on all the IIS servers in the fleet, which was around 150 or so. And like, what we think it'll take you about a week. I'm like, you want me to RDP into 150 machines, open up computer management, add this machine as a local admin? Because at the time I didn't know what a GPO was or anything. And they're like, yeah, that's how we do things. I'm like, okay. And of course I knew PowerShell was a thing at the time. I'm like, there has to be a better way. I am not RDPing into 150 servers. That's just not going to happen. Found a script, I had a Python background at the time, kind of understood what the script was doing, modified it to fix my needs. An hour later I was done. And my manager was like, I'm done. He's like, what? We thought you were going to take that at least a week, if not more. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm done. And then from that, it's just all kind of started going from there.
Nice.
It's an addictive feeling when you get that first really successful thing that you do with PowerShell. It really makes it easy to keep learning and keep tackling new problems and solving them and growing and that kind of thing.
It's like, what else can I automate? And that's just kind of that my mindset from that point on just changed of I'm going to teach myself how to do it in PowerShell first, even if it is a clicky next, it's a real fast thing. Because the next time I need to do it, I can do it in a second and end up saving myself time over the long run.
Nice. I think,
Very
Jordan, you kind of had a similar story at your previous employer, too. You had a bunch of tasks that you didn't especially look forward to doing and found a way to automate your way out of that, didn't you?
I wasn't smart enough to look into PowerShell myself. It's actually Kirk that told me when I was first getting started that if I wanted to stand out, learn PowerShell. And he's the one, he got me my first real IT job. He convinced me to go to college. He sent the recruiter over to me for this job here. So every time he gives me advice, I don't question it. So he said learn PowerShell, so I did. And he was right again.
I wish my own choices for myself were as
You told me to learn it, then you became a Linux guy.
Yeah, I don't regret learning Linux, but yeah, my first PowerShell script that I truly loved was the one at the mortgage company where the agents were sending
the spammy
marketing materials through the production server, and I wrote a PowerShell script that would count the volume that each user was sending. And I got management approval that if they sent over X number, they would immediately go to internal only, and their manager would get CC'd, and they get called into a meeting to discuss policy because the reputation of the mail server was so damaged by it. And we encouraged them all to use proper platforms, and it worked.
After you left, we updated the email, and I had to go through the entire process to get approval to rewrite it.
Yeah.
It's because you'd brought the reputation up, and then they changed emails, and they're allowed to send it again, and the reputation went back to bad. We were blocked everywhere.
Yeah, you have to separate your marketing and business channels in email.
So I went there, and I got to reuse your script and rewrite it in a way, and every time that they sent the email, they'd have to either email the head of compliance or IT. That's the only people they could email at that point to say, hey, sorry, I broke the rules.
They had to, it was just a way to protect the reputation, but that was I still remember how much I enjoyed. I think it took 3 weeks to bring that from concept to reality, and it was some of the most fun I've had at work.
It's scrolling through the logs.
Impressive.
It's looking for the same title over a certain amount of time within a window, and if it finds it, it goes. So it wasn't proactive, it was reactive, but I can't think of a way that it could be proactive.
But it stopped the abuse at a set. We determined what the minimum level of abuse we were to tolerate, and that's where we stopped it.
Yeah, even if you took them off the hub transport rule, you have to wait for everything to update, so they couldn't email for up to 4 hours unless you reboot the entire hub transport rule.
I think that was 1 or 2.0, so who knows what it can do now. Version 7 is probably way more capable.
That was a fun one. As I looking through that and seeing the going through the logs part was eye-opening for me. It's when I got to really see the power. It's got me launched.
The logs are where everything is at. If the code is written well and logs well, that's where you find your answers.
I've got a question. I'm just going to read this one to you. It says, I want to get good at PowerShell. I understand the gist of it. I mostly use existing commands that I adapt to my needs. Is there a good place to go, to actually learn it?
Today we got a 40% discount on a great place to go to learn that. Go to the Twitter for James and get yourself that book. I think that's a great place to start.
And actually, funny you should mention that. So I'm doing a 3-day PowerShell course with Don Jones in Vegas, May 9th, I believe is the date. It's also on my Twitter page. It's the pinned one up at the top. So if you want to come learn from me and Don, that is a great place. If not, then the book is the second best place.
I think Don was tweeting out about that one on Monday that they had a run, so there's only 2 to 3 seats available because they're keeping it a small group of 20 or so.
20 is the absolute max. We're trying to keep it around that 16 to 17 number. Yeah, I think there's 3, maybe 4 seats. Someone had an issue and Don's working on that. But I think only 3 or 4 seats left.
Right.
So what I'll also say to Zeto is it sounds like they're in a great place where they have some understanding of PowerShell to run some commands and they've been able to get some stuff to work. But with a little bit of that kind of foundational level stuff, they'll be able to really increase what they're able to solve. And because they already have that familiarity, they've already learned a certain amount that'll make it a bit easier. So definitely keep with it, Zeto.
So the book is fantastic. You mentioned Don Jones. He wrote the original. Him and Jeff Hicks wrote the original PowerShell monthly lunches.
Right, yeah, they wrote the first 3 editions.
First edition, first 3, and then the 4th was used. So that class would be fantastic. That book is great. Someone asked, how do I get started? And to me, the best thing is find a task that you have to do often that you don't enjoy doing, and just start down the process of automating it. And it's slow going at first because you have to go, how do I do this? And it's a lot of research. But once you automate out the first piece, all the time spent on that task can be automating the next piece. So it's just and then I can't. The whole reason for the podcast that we have is because the community. If you go to PowerShell.org or there's a Discord or a Slack, they're always happy to help. So if you have any questions, you're going to get great help.
Yeah, I think Andrew was right. A little bit envious. When you first get in, it's the most fun when you see your first script start to go. It is addictive. And
There's so much progress to be made when you're new, and it's like a world of possibility that if there's nobody at your work who's kind of gone through this experience, it's probably new to your whole company, to the whole IT department. What you're going to be able to accomplish through automation and through PowerShell is something that's going to take time for your team to get used to, is what I've found. If you continue down that kind of automation journey, and
and we did have what we. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
A question was for you. The course in May, I actually was looking to attend, but I have a conflict. Is this something you're going to announce another event on in the future?
Possibly. I am kind of starting to moonlight as a trainer, so something I might personally start doing. But this is the Don's farewell class, as he's calling it.
Okay.
Because he hasn't taught anything PowerShell since 2014, so this is his first public class.
This sounds like an opportunity.
Since then, yeah, and it sounds and the way he's talking is it's going to be his last PowerShell class.
Looks like we have another
passing
question.
the torch, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Let's throw this question up there. Hey guys, I already have version 3 of the book. Should I just start with that for now? Russell K.
So version 3 is focused on PowerShell 5.1. If that's what you're using in your environment, then that book is completely fine. The 4th edition mainly focuses on PowerShell 7, and it comes over, and we get across some of the new features that are in there, such as the parallel flag in the for each command. But if you're hard pinned at 5.1 and you already have that book, then unless you really just want to buy a copy, there's really no reason to.
And a question, someone's asking again what the title of the book is.
Learn PowerShell in a Month of Lunches, 4th edition. You can get it on Manning.com, or it'll be available on Amazon towards the end of April.
So if we want to pull up the screen here, this is the PowerShell in a Month Lunches. Just this one here, it's from Manning.com.
Yeah.
And it looks like the Kindle version of it is April 19th, but the EPUB and the other ones are ready to go now. Based on
EPUB is out. If you ordered it directly from Manning through the Meet, they are. I was told they're mailing those today. You cannot quote me on that, but that's what the last email I got was. And if I would have thought about it, I would have brought one. I got an advanced copy, and by advanced copy, it came yesterday. And I should have brought it down so I could show you, but it looks just like that.
Yeah. So another person mentioned the 3rd edition. I think still in most environments, 5.1, since that's the one that's installed by default, is being used. So the 3rd edition is going to give you all the information you need. If you're looking to expand outside the Windows environment or learn what's going into PowerShell 7, that's when you'd want to look at the 4th edition, I think.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things I will say about the 4th edition is everything in there, most things I should say, are backwards compatible. But in the 3rd edition, we do a lot of WMI commands. In the 4th edition, obviously there's no WMI in PowerShell 7. So all of those have been ported over to SIM commands. So if you're using WMI commands in your environment now, you should probably stop unless you're using SECM, and we won't even talk about that. But if you want to start getting more diving into the SIM commands, all those examples, with the exception of chapter 22, are all SIM based.
Yeah, so if you want the latest information, 4th edition is what you want.
Right.
Yeah, I think like the core kind of foundation, how PowerShell works, is the same. But if you want to be if you're seeing scripts on the internet and you're using them, you're probably going to be running across some of this PowerShell core type stuff. So being aware of it with the latest edition will probably prove useful.
Yeah. And what we're kind of telling a lot of people now, PowerShell core has been out for like 2, 3, maybe even 4 years now at this point. It's starting to we're trying to push it to become like industry standard. Like, we know you're probably not going to put PowerShell 7 on your servers, but there's no reason you shouldn't be running PowerShell 7 as your everyday driver on your desktop using VS Code, because everything in 7.1 or 7.2 will run in 5.1. well, not everything. I said that backwards. Anything on 5.1 will run in 7.2 with the exception of WMI commands. So I always tell people, run PowerShell 7 as your everyday driver, write everything to be PowerShell 7 compliant. 98% chance it's going to work on your 5.1 servers anyways.
Got a question we're going to throw up here. Guys, is there a security risk in older PowerShell versions? Thanks, DDD.
I would think what older version? Version 1, 2, and 3, you shouldn't be running those at all. Version 4, if you absolutely have to on a if you're still for some reason running a 2008 R2 or a 2012 server, I would still update to 5.1, the latest edition of 5.1. It will run on 2008 and higher.
Yeah, and where security is concerned, make sure that you have the correct policies applied. Microsoft has put a lot of resources into making it so you can secure PowerShell, so you have good insight into the logs and all that kind of thing, as long as you configure it properly.
So
yeah, we would always enable PowerShell transcripts on all of our servers, so we could, and then we could get back to the log parsing that we were talking about earlier. If that's a thing that you really enjoyed, is going through those transcripts or sending them off to a SIM tool somewhere and letting that do the work for you.
So I would say PowerShell is not really a way for a threat to get in, but if they get in, they're going to use PowerShell most likely to help them expand their authority. Does that make sense? So you want to secure that environment, but PowerShell itself, I don't think is an attack vector, or not a great one. It's once they're already in, PowerShell is a fantastic tool for someone that's
right. Yeah. So Lee Holmes and a couple other folks over the PowerShell team wrote an awesome blog article called PowerShell Hearts the Blue Team, and basically it goes into all of the built-in security features that PowerShell has. And like you just said, and Snover has said this, a million times, is that the bad guys are going to get in. I would rather them use my tool than to use some other tool they brought with them, because I have logging and tracking and can track exactly what they've done with it.
And James, we have a question from Jim and a couple other folks. They were asking about the 40% off link for the book on your Twitter page. They're having a hard time finding that. Where is that one located?
See if I can't find it on the computer.
Great question.
But I'll put the link to your Twitter page in the chat again.
So we were mentioning security. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just talking to myself. Yeah, because I've retweeted it a bunch since then.
Okay, yeah, if you find it.
Buried down there.
There it is. I'll put this in the Zoom link, and I'll let someone else. Oh, I don't have the chat feature.
Oh, man. Sorry.
do you have Jordan's email?
Let me just.
We can get it in.
So if if they want to email PowerShell@pdq.com, that'll go to where we can reply with that link once we get hold of that. We'll make sure everyone gets it that wants it.
Yeah.
Yeah, make sure I get a copy of that.
Okay.
Awesome. Chad says the tweet is 3 days ago. Also, if you want to scroll back a bit.
Yeah, I found it.
Okay, cool.
I hate how you can only have one pin tweet at a time.
You mentioned Lee Holmes had that Blue Team Loves PowerShell blog post. And earlier I was mentioning that PowerShell.org YouTube channel has a nice talk by Lee Holmes. It's on a similar subject. So if you're interested in learning more about PowerShell and maybe you're concerned about things, definitely check out those resources to understand. There's been a great deal of engineering effort, time, consideration into this problem. And there is a bit of FUD out there around PowerShell, especially because a quick little headline can make you feel a certain type of scared way if they mention PowerShell was used in an attack, when in reality, it's not the cause.
All right. I was back to thinking about people that are looking to learn it, and this is a tool that Andrew and I were talking about not that long ago, the PS Cohen's, which helps people learn to write pester testing, which will help you test to make sure it's code to test your code, if that makes sense. So
yeah, it teaches pester.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But more than just teaching pester, it uses pester as a way to teach the basics of PowerShell, like true and false and stuff, like very basic stuff, how to add numbers together all the way down to complex topics. I was actually thinking of doing a blog post, or maybe we could cover it in a podcast episode. But that's also a cool resource for beginners who are trying to like just write some code. Maybe they don't have a problem they're trying to solve, but they still want to like progress in PowerShell. A module called PSKOANS, PSKOANS, is a module where you can get your hands on to some code and work through it and answer some problems.
And
Yeah, I think Joel is pretty active he's very active in the Discord because he's one of the admins of the Discord and Slack servers, and he's the one that's wrote that. So he's kind of pretty responsive as well there if you ping him about it.
Yeah, it's a really cool resource.
So it's also,
and it kind of highlights the cool stuff about the community, right? Like it's a community developed resource that is super awesome, super valuable.
I was just going to mention that, it's nice that we do have PowerShell events coming back live as opposed to virtual. So real quick, we do have some upcoming events. James, if you want to plug some of those, let's get that out there.
Yeah, so the first one coming up is the PowerShell and DevOps Global Summit. That's April 25th through the 28th in Seattle, Washington, or Bellevue. It's right outside Seattle. So the ticket sales for that end April 18th. That's because that's when I have to give the food numbers to the hotel. So we have to know how many people are coming by that point. So you got about another 19 days to buy your tickets. You can get those at PowerShell.org/summit. Has all the information, has the schedule, the speaker lineup, and of
if
course,
you sign up for that,
link to buy the tickets.
Sorry, if you sign up for that, Jordan and I will also be there if you want to say hi.
Yeah, and also, I guess I don't remember, but whoever asked about how the best way to learn PowerShell, we do offer a hands-on on-ramp program. It's spearheaded by Jeff Hicks. So that is basically a DevOps 101 washing machine, if you kind of will. The idea is you'll come in knowing the basics of PowerShell, and then you'll kind of come out as a full-fledged junior DevOps engineer in about 3.5 days. So that curriculum is really intense, but it's also really cool. It's the same price as it's just happening in a different classroom at Summit.
Right, and it's probably a bit late for this year, but next year there's also a scholarship program for people that are starting out, but like they're still trying to be active in the community. Or I guess what are the
yeah. So right, so for the on-ramp program, we do offer scholarships. We were able to give out 10 full paid scholarships in 2019, and we had 10 scheduled in 2020, and then, COVID. We were able to give out 6 scholarships this year. These are 100% fully paid. We pay for your air travel. We pay for 5 nights in hotel, entrance into the conference. Pretty much you're on your own for like 3 meals throughout the entire week for the 3 days that we don't provide a dinner. And it's just for people underrepresented groups in the IT community, or just those that are trying to get in and can't, financially can't spend upwards to $5,000 to send themselves to this on-ramp program. So we're able to provide assistance for as many people as possible.
So is there a link, or if you said it, I missed it. Where do we go to if you're interested? Where would you sign up for that?
PowerShell.org/summit is the Summit homepage. And then from there, it has all the information, the on-ramp and on-ramp scholarship. Scholarship is closed, but still to see the information for next year is on right off of that /summit page.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative to the PowerShell org for offering that, because years and years ago when they first started offering it, that's the only reason I was able to attend my first PowerShell summit, and that really helped my career change. And I owe a lot to PowerShell.org.
Yeah, I think that was 2018 if I remember correctly.
Yep,
that's where I learned that.
And then
all the people I work with.
And of course, where else other than at the PowerShell summit? Well, I guess if you go to Europe too, but you come down, sit at the bar, and drink whatever it is that you like to drink, alcoholic and non-alcoholic, and sit down and have a conversation with the PowerShell team. Not over a Zoom meeting, not over Teams, but sitting in the bar stool next to you, the PowerShell engineers, or even better, Snover randomly pops in every day as well, and we'll sit there and talk to you and listen. And some of the improvements that have come out of later versions of PowerShell came from suggestions talking with community members at Summit.
Yeah, the conversations that are had at Summit are so valuable. Getting that group of people together, developing those relationships, the hallway chatter that you get to overhear, that you get to participate in is so valuable. And I don't know if I've ever seen it repeated anywhere else like that.
Yeah. And then the next event that, so obviously we talked about the fire hose class. That's a personal endeavor. That's not a PowerShell.org thing. But the next PowerShell.org event that we have is coming up in July. I believe it's July 13th or 14th. July 14th, 15th, 16th, and 17th. So that's a 4-day mini unconference. It's in Las Vegas. It's limited to 20 people. And this is our expert level deep dive conference that we do. We haven't done one since 2019 because this is just one of those things that you can't do over a Teams meeting. So that we don't really do a CFP process for that. Part of you buying a ticket is that you're agreeing to do at least one session for the group. Like that's kind of how small and intimate that group is. Think of it as a 4-day working group, DevOps and PowerShell working group, as opposed to a conference. And we also spend 1 day at the pool.
Well, that doesn't stink. I'd do it for that right there.
Yeah. So that information will be online, PowerShell.org/DevOps camp. And that goes live the week of Summit. So April 24th is when that webpage and ticket sales start popping up for that. But I think that's going to be $1,300, and that includes 4 nights in the hotel. So that's conference plus food plus hotel.
Okay, that's a good rate for a conference. $1,300.
Right. That it's like I said, and your hotel rooms in that cost.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming out and talking to us about PowerShell. I mean, I know this is a busy time for you. You got a lot coming on, but I say this a lot. The community of PowerShell is the best in the world. So if you're looking to get into PowerShell, hopefully they take a look at some of the suggestions we had here. But the community is always going to be welcoming. Just dive in. You're going to get welcomed. You're going to get help, and they're going to help you advance your skills so you can help the next generation as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of resources out there as well. James, thank you for providing resources. The book, you can check out his Twitter page, get some more information there. And then, of course, Jordan and Andrew, the PowerShell podcast that you guys have just started, you can find that anywhere you download podcasts. That is it's going to be a huge resource. We're excited about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to, like we've said, tap into the community, but also kind of provide an avenue for people who are more interested, looking for a starting point, looking to hear people talking about PowerShell. So it's kind of circulating in their mind. Hopefully it's a resource for both of those.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you very much, James, for coming by.
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me.
Always a blast to
fun.
talk to you. Yeah. If you still have PowerShell questions, whether it's a question like you're stuck somewhere in your code or a question just about best practice, if you use the email we sent out earlier, the PowerShell@pdq.com, Andrew and I use that for our podcast. So if there's something that comes in that we can help, we'll try to help that in the podcast. And PowerShell is powered by the community. The more people involved, the better it is for everybody. Okay. For PDQ.com, I'm Jordan.
Adam Kerr.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. If you like what you've seen today, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also check out the PowerShell podcast. It's available wherever your podcasts are originated from. Makes it pretty easy. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you back here next time.